Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we bring the mind, body, and gym together so you can improve your health, increase performance, and live your best life. For more information, visit thinkfitnesslife.com. Here are your hosts, Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie.
If you're looking for motivation or inspiration in your fitness journey, take a listen to this interview with Muzna Amin. From full-time working mom to marathon runner and beyond, Muzna highlights the importance of starting small and learning as you go. One person's success story is another person's reason for starting. Thanks for listening. All right, we are live once again with Think Fitness Life podcast. You're here with Matt Gluckman today and Muzna, who is here to tell us her personal fitness journey from being a person who never really even thought about working out or had any concept of organized running to training for 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, and I believe marathons too,
Yes,
right?
that's
Yeah,
correct.
right. So I want to just talk about this story. I think it's really important for people to hear other people's stories because I think one person's success story is another person's reason for starting. So tell me a little bit about your lifestyle before there was an incident that sparked Muzna to make all these changes. Spoiler alert, her mom had a stroke, unfortunately. But so let's dive into what was your lifestyle like before your mom's stroke?
So thank you, Matt, for having me. I appreciate this.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this for the sole purpose of inspiring anyone and everyone out there, your listeners or anybody that's listening to it for the first time. We're going to backtrack to 2016. Prior to 2016, I was mom, 2 boys, taking care of the kids, working, a regular thing. And fitness was not something that I didn't even think about. I was often not having enough water, not having breakfast, just going about the day with, just kind of, oh, okay, hungry, great, do this, just going about your busy way. 2016, my mom had a stroke unexpectedly. And this is somebody who goes to work and, but had no really other conditions. So she had diabetes and taking medication for that. Stroke was unexpected. And then she also had to have a surgery because she realized there was a tumor on top of her brain. So everything was very a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we came out of that, and then she went into rehab. For 3 months, I kind of would visit her, kind of go and massage her, and I think that time unknowingly had an impact on me, and I realized that I wanted to do something about my health. She did come home, and it took her about a year to kind of come back to baseline. She wasn't able to go back to work, but she was able to do a lot of things that she does even till today. So that was end of 2017. And 2018, I was like, end of 2017, I said, okay, 2018 is the year I'm going to run a marathon. I do not know where I got that idea. Do not ask me because I don't know. All I knew, I was like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon. I had never ran a 5K.
Yeah.
Ever in my life.
You just set this like super lofty goal for yourself, just like make yourself have to get after it.
I think that's what it was. I was like, oh, running. I think I can do this, not knowing what it entails.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I live in Canada, Calgary. So training meant running in the cold. I don't have any equipment at home. I didn't have a gym membership at the time.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say training meant indoors, but out in the cold, even more perseverance.
Because I joined a running room. So I went into there's a shop called the Running Room, and they have these run clubs. What that means is you just join a group of people that are running.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's easy enough. I don't have to pay for a trainer. I don't have to do anything, buy some shoes and off we go. And they run outside. They don't run inside.
Yeah.
So that's why I meant outside.
So talk to me about like, what was your first run like? Can you remember like the first day, the first run group that you went to?
Yes, I do. And that was around a couple blocks away from my house. They said, just come on a Sunday. We're going to run at 8 o'clock. I said, okay, 8 o'clock, great. Nobody's awake at the time. Kids are sleeping and whatnot. And they said, what do I have to do? So they gave me what I need to do, which was just like wear comfortable clothing and have a pair of sneakers. It's
Sounds
not going
easy
to
enough, right?
easy enough. I had a pair of sneakers from like, I don't know, 2 years prior to that. I went and bought some Asics. So I was like, okay, these are good. Showed it to them. I'm like, never done anything. So I had to kind of really, hey, walk me through this.
Right, right.
So yeah, they said, yeah, these shoes look good. Just come, wear comfortable clothing, and wear clothes that are layers, so you're not sweating. If you get cold, I said my hands get cold. They said, yeah, have gloves that you can kind of take off, take on, not heavy gloves. And even if it's snowing, we're going to run. And I was like, okay. Luckily, it wasn't snowing, and it was clear. The path was clear, and I ran the first time. I was out of breath in 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, like 2
Yeah.
minutes into it, and I'm like, I can't do this. And well, I didn't say I can't do this. I just kind of said, oh, okay, I'm out of breath. Can we slow down? So there was this couple of people that were really supportive. They're like, oh, you can walk. You don't have to run all the way. And I think that piece of like that sentence itself, like you can walk, you don't have to run all the way. I probably carried that through into all my training up until my marathon.
Yeah.
So yeah, kept going, met a wonderful group of people. They introduced themselves, realized that even though I was slow, I had somebody that I could walk with or run with. Like extremely supportive group of people. Like what
Yeah.
else could I ask for?
Right.
And then I just kept on going every week. I would once a week. It started with once a week.
That's how it started, once a week? Yeah, like
Yeah,
every Sunday? Yeah. So there was
every Sunday.
there was no voice in your head that was like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta stop. This is awful. This is terrible. I'm 5 minutes in, I'm out of breath. This is a bad idea." You had none of that?
Well, the moment they said it's okay, you can walk, I think
That
it
was the
just kind of
relief in your
said,
brain? Yeah.
I was like, okay, I don't have to run. That means I
Right.
can walk. And so that was my comforting thing.
And it's a little bit of like, you were trying to meet the demands of this, trying to put on this fitness life, and then you kind of like learned, oh, I can kind of adapt it to my pace. I get to
Yeah.
pick, and I can kind of like run, walk, or adjust my pacing to my needs. So that's great. That's really interesting. So then when did it pick up? When did you start to like get the itch where you're like, I want more of this?
After a long time, I think I had to be really persistent.
Yeah.
So I turned 40 in April. I started this in Jan. And a week after I turned 40, I said, okay, I'm going to run my 5K. It was like a 5K in minus 20 something. Extremely cold. I could have easily backed out and I could have said, no, you know what? I'm not doing it. But I actually hadn't registered at the time, but I was like, I need to do a run. There's a Calgary Marathon race coming up and I need to do some distance there. At that time, I thought, oh, in 2 months, I'm going to run a half marathon. That was like, oh, I could do this. Anyways, the 5K went well in terms of it was cold and there was lots of people and everybody was encouraging. I met a couple of people that were like, oh yeah, this is their first run. So I think everybody was really encouraging. And I think that's what kept me going despite the cold, despite the speed, despite, like everybody's like, oh, great job, good job. So everybody's very encouraging. And I think that's what kept me going. And then they would guide you. They'd be like, oh, you don't have a watch? Oh, no problem. We'll tell you I didn't have a watch. I didn't have a watch even when I ran my first half marathon.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you want one for a point of reference for like your pacing, right?
well, yeah, and I didn't know that. All I did was like, oh, I'm just gonna run a half marathon. And I did the 5K, and then 5 weeks later, I did the 10K. And again, I met somebody that was really encouraging, and they were like, oh, we come here and I run every year, and I run at my own pace. So I kept bumping into people that were just going with the flow, doing it, and not really like they would, if you looked at them or if you saw them run or pace or whatever, they didn't really look like runners per se. But they were there. They were out there at a race. They were there, being motivated and doing it.
Yeah.
And I think
And that made it easier for you to like continue to show up, right? Because it's like,
yes.
I want to see
Yes.
these people again. And then it's kind of a little bit momentumous, right? When you're with a
Yes.
group of people, we're all working towards this goal together.
Yes.
So
And
when you,
encouraging.
yeah, right. So you went from this kind of overworked, working, also, taking care of the household, taking care of your kids, flying by the seat of your pants, not even having time to think about your health. Then your mom has a stroke. You take care of her. It kind of plants the seed hanging out with her. And then the following year, you're like, it's it. This is it. I got to make this choice to add this into my life. And you add running in. And then, it sounds like, it kind of was bit by bit, right? You said you started like once a week and then it kind of built up to more times a week and then to the 5K. What other changes were you making to take care of your health? Like, when did you start looking at like diet and maybe sleep and stress and things like that?
So I think water intake was a huge
Was a big one.
part for me because I never paid attention to my water. And then when you're running, you have to take care of your water. And then I got
Yeah.
a running belt where you're drinking water and you
Right.
keep hydrating. For the 10K, a lot of the people, like I kept meeting these people and they give you little bits of information. They say, well, 1 week prior to your 10K, you got to drink lots of water so your muscles are feeling good. And so you realize how water is related to muscles. So that's all information, not from learning or joining or having a trainer, but it's information I learned as I went along this journey through all
Yeah.
the people that I met. And then people will tell you stuff, but I think it's about, are you listening? Are you paying
Mm,
attention to what they're saying? And then kind of applying that. And it was little bits of things that I incorporated.
mhm. Yeah.
Um,
And then it sounds like kind of necessity was the mother of invention, and they kind of all had a purpose, right? Like instead of just like, to your point, sitting down and absorbing all this information out of like a textbook or a video online, it was like you went to run. The more you got invested into enjoying running, the more you got information that was pertaining to running and helping
yes,
you be a better runner.
yes, exactly. I did join like it was like a training program, and it was very minimal amount.
Sorry,
Um,
resistance training, like some cross
It was
training,
actually
essentially.
for half marathon. So I
Okay.
ran the 10K in May, and then the half marathon was in September.
Mm,
So I had 3 months. So they said, hey, why don't you just hop onto this program? And what that's going to do is that's just going to keep you a little bit, like instead of 1 day a week, you'll actually do 2 days a week with a group that's
mhm,
also training for a half marathon, the
mhm.
same one, like so we're on the same training plan. And then we'll invite people to talk. So, about your health, about your nutrition,
Just
about
expand
supplements.
everyone's knowledge. Yeah,
Yes. So that one
I
was
love that.
I did invest in that,
Mhm.
but it was a very affordable, minimal plan for
Right.
3 months. They chalked it out. I hate to say I didn't really follow exactly what they told me to do. And a couple of times I felt like, well, maybe I'm not in for this. I don't think I can do this.
Mm.
And I think what resonated with me was everybody kept telling me it doesn't matter if you're sticking to the plan, just show up.
I love it. 80% of life is just showing up, right?
So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I did. And my half marathon was also in cold. It was in Banff,
Good for
Alberta.
you.
For people that don't, the audience that does not know, it's like one of those really picturesque, like mountainous places. It started off with snow. It ended with snow. In the middle, we had rain and sleet. It was in September, and it
Yeah.
was full blown winter, pretty much.
Sounds like
Um,
you don't like to run in warm weather.
yeah, my body actually got used to running in the cold.
Cold. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm curious, like you went from having this super busy schedule to carving out a little bit of time on Sunday morning because everyone else was asleep so you could go run. And like, can you remember that transition of when, I guess, like that personal desire, that personal hunger grew bigger and you started to carve out more of your time for yourself rather than just for taking care of somebody else or work or errands, things like that. The busyness of
well,
life.
Yeah, no, and I think after the 10K, when I realized that I wanted to do a half marathon and talking to people, they were like, well, you have to at least do 2 to 3 times, like minimum three
Mm.
times a week. You need to have
Right. The
running in
training
your
kicks up.
training kicks up. Like you have to do this. You can't just say, I'm going to wing it. Your body's going to hurt. And then I didn't realize anything about strength training. So they said, have you been doing strength training? And I said, nope. What is that? Right. So you learn as you go. So started doing some just body weight exercises.
Okay.
Didn't even know
Right.
what body weight exercises were. So I started doing those. It I think it was like, oh, okay, she's exercising. It's not like I'm going out clubbing, right? So I think the family was not sure what was going on, obviously, because I come from a family where nobody's ever done this. Uh,
Right.
we're
Right.
not able to understand it, and my immediate friends did not do this, so it was more like
You
anybody
probably
that I
look
met.
crazy in all of, most of your social circles. Right.
Yeah, I met new people. I ended up just hanging out around
You
runners because they
create
knew
new
what
social circles, right? Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So they just said, "Well, you have to carve out time," and everybody was like, "Well," I was like, "Oh, what do you mean carve out time? It's just a run. It's just a day where you run." Well, no, it's not. You actually carve out a lot of time, and that's what I ended up learning to do because I didn't know,
Right.
right?
So what does like typical a week at a glance for Muzna look like for her training schedule? Like how many days are like runs and how many days are resistance training and any yoga involved, any sauna? Tell us like your
Well,
week at a glance.
all that is actually now what I do. But for
Right.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
half marathon and for my full marathon, even from half to full, I didn't do any of that, but like, I'm like, "I'm just running, that's it." I did start a little bit of exercises because they're like, "Well, you need to strengthen your knees and you need to strengthen your ankles and your legs and you like everything, like
Were
body."
you noticing like pains in those areas?
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 So
exactly.
again, it
Whatever
just seems like
use.
I love your journey because it's like it was like you know, bite off as much as you can chew. And then like, it reminds me of this quote that's life is like driving in heavy fog. Like you can only see the first like foot in front of you, but you see that foot and you drive that foot. And then once you get that foot, you see the next foot that's clear and you see the next thing that you do. So I just love that you just kind of are going full court press into each thing and just kind of learning as you go. And yeah, that's really cool.
And I didn't know what I was going to learn, pretty much. I think
Mhm.
that's the exciting thing. And I did have injuries. Like I popped my knee 3 weeks prior to my first half marathon and I was hurting and I spoke to a couple of my running friends and they're like, "Yeah, it doesn't look right. You got to ice it. You got to make sure you're, healing. Don't push through. Just kind of make sure you're healed up for your are you still gonna run it?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot more work." And in my head, I was doing a lot work, right?
Yeah.
Because I think back and I'm like, no, I was not doing much, like I could have easily bailed out, but I was just so determined that I mean, I trained and I need to run a half marathon,
I
even though
invested
I've
all this
got this
time. Yeah.
injury. Yeah, I
Yeah.
invested time and I know I have to try. I have to try and do this. So I think those little bits and I mean, I got back from my half marathon and I kid you not, my body was aching, like my legs were hurting. I wasn't the fastest. I was probably the last 10 to finish it, pretty much.
Mhm.
Okay. Last 10, 15. I mean,
But you were just
definitely.
excited to finish, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. So it was just, yeah, and did that, and I was hurting, and I was like, "Oh my god, my body hurts," and I couldn't get
Right.
off. I mean, I remember it's about 2 hours drive from here, the place where I was supposed to actually run. So coming back, I couldn't get up from the car. Like, I couldn't go to the bathroom. Like, it was
Yeah,
my legs were so done, and it's your first time you're experiencing that pain.
right.
Um,
And then you
I
then you learn about all the recovery protocols after you get to that point.
I did not know. So it's like I went to the physiotherapist and I said, "Well, this is what's happening." And they're like, "Well, yeah, you got to rest it out.
Yeah.
No running for 6 weeks. You got to take it easy, right?" Um so you learn those mechanisms pretty much as you go along.
What are some of the major lessons that you feel like have stuck with you that you've learned throughout the journey?
So,
But whether it could be pertaining to marathons or just life in general.
well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit
Yeah.
to my journey from the half that I did in September that year. And then 2 years later, I was fortunate enough to run a full marathon.
Mm.
Um, and when I ran the half, my goal initially was full. Remember, like that was my goal. So when I ran the half, I was like, okay, I have to still keep doing
Keep
this so that I
going.
can run the full. That
Yeah.
was like my ultimate, like, hey, that's the end
That
goal,
was the
right?
goal you set when you started, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's what kept me going because I had people that I was running with and they were like, we've never run a full. We've never felt the need.
Mm.
You could easily just keep doing halves and, and keep training your body. And I was like, no, I set out a goal to do a full. My goal was to run the full in 2020, not knowing about COVID, right?
Mhm.
I started training and we were doing long runs, and I had a friend that was also training for a marathon that year. So we would do long runs together and we would run like a couple of times a week. And I wouldn't do a lot on my own because we'd be doing it outside together. COVID hits and we're just like everybody's in lockdown. And I think there was a span of 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And I was like, I'm not running. I can't run. I can't run on my own. I can't do any long runs. Like, this is hard. It was like really, and I was like, maybe I can't do this. I had another friend who was also going to run the Boston Marathon that year. And so, what the running room decided to do is arrange a virtual run for her. And we all went to kind of encourage her and, really like cheer for her as she ran it as if she was running the Boston.
Yeah.
And it was about 5 or 6 weeks before my time that I was scheduled technically to run. And my friend was like, "Why don't we do the same for you? Like, you're gonna run it, otherwise you're just gonna not train." So I got really lucky
So,
because
so
I
you
had all
you
these
guys
people.
do a virtual run group for you. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So, I mean, they just kind of said, "We'll cheer you on. We'll set up stuff for you, and we're gonna make sure you run your marathon and just sign up for it." And because I wanted to do it on the day I turned 42.2K, the distance of a full marathon is 42.2. So
Mm.
I actually wanted to run that distance on the day I turned that specific
That
age.
specific part. Yeah. That's cool.
So, yeah, and I ran the marathon, and I actually had a whole bunch of people cheering for me, and they set up a arch for me specifically. We carved out a distance actually to kind of where we were going to run, and I had a friend we were running with, like she was my running buddy, and she was just encouraging me throughout the whole distance.
That must have
And
been an emotionally full experience to
it was
complete.
amazing.
Yeah. Did it feel like surreal? Like, it went for that 2 year span from half marathon to full marathon and
Yeah, yeah,
had
exactly.
the roadblocks along the way.
Yeah, and I had a friend of mine, he actually did a drone video of my
Your
marathon
first
run.
marathon? That's so
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You
So
have
it
the
was
footage.
I do. It's on my YouTube channel, so yeah.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, what do
Uh,
you think sharing kind of the life lessons that from your journey for others, what do you want people to take away from your story?
so before I answer that, please hold on to that thought.
Yes. Yeah.
I wanna say that basically after the marathon, I took on another challenge,
Okay.
and which was a 14-day base camp trek. And I actually did that in August of last year. So, and again, I mean, I got into hiking as I was running, totally unexpected, and just kept on again, just with the running as well as with the hiking, kept on meeting people and learning from them.
Was
Um,
hiking like active recovery for days where you weren't supposed to run, you needed to rest the sore legs, but you wanted to still move?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice. Nice.
Exactly. And we've got beautiful mountains here, so when I just started
Mm.
falling in love with going out for the whole day and getting on top of a mountain and seeing the view and coming down, and your body hurts like anything, but you're just so happy and fulfilled, I think. So
then why not go so intense to setting up a 14-day trek?
yes,
So you're just like, you're walking with like your tent and everything like that. And you're just
yes, yeah.
sleeping out there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, we didn't have to carry tents. It was through a trekking company.
Mm.
So they did the tents and we carried the sleeping
Your
bags and
food
stuff.
gear and
They
stuff.
carried the food. Yeah, it's actually an organized trek. It's called, the one that I did was K2 Base Camp.
Mm.
So yeah, and
Wow.
that was in August. You had a question for me in terms of what was my takeaway.
Well, yeah, and you have lots of. It's almost like your journey has like false peaks. You know that term, like when you're hiking and you see the peak that you think is the top of the mountain, but it's not, and you keep going, and there's another top, and it's very relatable to your story where you had this peak that you went to go hit, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was like just a checkpoint to another peak that you then set for yourself that you then hit, and again you were like, well, let's keep raising the bar. From the outsiders looking in, like, I think the story is like always set lofty goals for yourself, because if you shoot for the moon, you land somewhere among the stars. But, you know, just having you tell the story, I'm curious what you feel like personally are like the major lessons that you learned throughout your journey and what you would want to share with others.
Well, I set out to do this for physical health. And today, almost like 6 years, 5 years later, 6 years later, physical health is still the key,
Yeah,
the main goal. But
main driver.
absolutely. But the byproduct was the mental health. And I think when I realized the mental piece didn't come in until I actually was training for my full marathon. And I didn't realize how impact all this physical exercise was having on my mental health, that it was really helping me, fueling, my moods and, kind of regulating me. So that was not something I expected or was even thinking, but that is a byproduct. And today it's on top of mind. Like I can self-analyze myself now and say, hey, I'm not doing well, I'm going to go out on a run, or I'm not doing well, I'm going to go to the gym. So that is something that I think the takeaway is you don't know what you're going to come across. Like, I think it's important to keep going, set out a goal, and you don't know it all. And I didn't know it all. So that's pretty much the takeaway.
Yeah,
I
I think that's a really important piece to highlight. I think so many times do we get caught in this, in our human moments of trying to overthink and set ourselves up for success and look 10 steps down the line when we're inaccurate with our observations anyway. We can't really predict the future. So I think there's a lot to be said for just go, just do it, right? Just set that goal and stick to it, which is what you did. You held yourself to it despite weather, COVID, you know, losing the social interaction, dealing with, you know, family and social circles that kind of looked at it as a really strange behavior, but you just kind of kept persevering and kept pushing through because, to your point, like you didn't know, like why not? It's almost like people say, like, why do something? Well, why not? Why not run a half marathon? Why not run a marathon? Why not do a 14-day trek? And I think through those experiences, through the action, is what led to the insight of how beneficial they are for your well-being. I love
Yes,
that. I love
yes,
that.
exactly. You don't know it all, and I did not know it all. So I'm just grateful. I think
Yeah.
earlier you had asked me about what you believe, like what is the quote that you believe that you would stand by? And I would like to just say, for me, it's not somebody else's quotation, it's my own. And
Yeah.
I just say start small, start today.
I love that.
Just don't think about it as doing all of it. You
Yeah.
can't. And I think that translates to life as well, right?
Yeah.
We feel like we have to know it all and we feel like we have to have it all. But I think it's the little things that add up.
Well, you took my last question away from me because I was going to ask you, what's your word of advice for someone who's just starting to think about making changes in their life? But I think that quote applies perfectly. Start small and start today. You take digestible steps and you take action. You do it right now. I love that because we do get so caught up and then we get into paralysis by analysis, and where we just now aren't doing anything because we overwhelmed ourselves. So I love your favorite quote. But yeah, let's go back to that. What someone was sitting right here and they just said, Muzna, I'm thinking about making changes in my life. I'm completely sedentary. I don't do anything. What's the first thing I should do? What do you recommend?
3 minutes. Take out 3 minutes.
I love it. Just 3 minutes. That's all you
Start
need.
with 3 minutes. I had so many people. There's not a lot of people from my community. My background is from Pakistan. I'm a Muslim Pakistani girl living in Canada. And a lot of people do not engage in physical activity. And I'm not asking people to go and run a marathon or go on a trek. But what I would like people to take away is start taking care of your health. Just do little. And that's my takeaway. Like, people can be doing nothing and just start with 3 minutes and then maybe 5 minutes. I actually had one girl, she's like, okay, I'll start with 5 minutes. And just now, I think this morning, she messaged me. It's like, I actually did 8 minutes. And I'm like, great. I was going to ask you to do 7 minutes, but if you've gone from 5 to 8, that's wonderful. Like, your next thing should be 10 minutes, right? So I think you build on that. And I think that's, even though my story might look like, oh my God, she did the marathon or she did the 14-day trek. That's not what people should be looking at. I think it's the little pieces and things that I didn't know along the way that I learned.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just love that because you just build on it, right? Like, you just went from start with 3 minutes to climbing K2, K2 summit. So, but it had to build, right? It had to get somewhere. It had to have a foundation to build off of, so it's just really exciting to see that big mountain that you've stocked with.
I have, so the summit to K2 is it's a mountaineering endeavor, and I haven't done that, but I've done the base camp.
Okay.
Which is still a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the summit is I think that's, people train for like years and years, and I think 10 to 15 years of mountaineering experience, as well as the expense of handling that. But
Is that where your next goals are taking you? Is that where you're leading?
No. I'm not there. Nope.
Well, Muzna, it's been a pleasure having you on. And just the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up here is just, what's your favorite lift in the gym? What's your favorite exercise to do?
Lunges.
All right.
Yeah.
Spoken like a good runner.
Yeah. I need those lunges, the weighted lunges.
They help with the running, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Muzna, is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with? Anything else you'd like to wrap up with and say, that anything we didn't mention?
No, I just love that you are doing this. And I'm hoping that, even if one person can hear this and feel motivated to go out there and take care of your health, I'm yay for me.
I love it. Well, Muzna Amin, everybody. And we'll catch you guys next time.
If you're ready to make steps towards improving your health or increasing your performance, book a free 30-minute call today by visiting thinkfitnesslife.com.